This is Part 2 Episode 118. Xiao Yan's eyes paused on this copper plate. His eyebrows were slightly knitted. After he carefully observed it, he discovered that he was unable to see anything that stood out on this copper plate. Based on his senses, he found that this thing was so ordinary that it could not be anything more. However, it was this extremely ordinary feeling that caused Xiao Yan to feel a little strange. Xiao Yan, if it is possible, try to obtain that copper plate. I have seen that drawing once. It is something that only appeared in the ancient times. Although I do not know its exact use, anything related to the ancient era is usually not simple. While Xiao Yan was feeling uncertain, a gruff, elderly voice suddenly sounded beside his ear. Xiao Yan's heart was shaken upon hearing Qian Huazunji's voice being transmitted to him. However, his face revealed nothing. A moment later, Xiao Yan slowly nodded. A fiery heat that an ordinary person would not discover surged into his dark black eyes. Xiao Yan's eyes merely paused on the copper plate for a moment before they shifted away. Immediately, his eyes swept another round over the jade platform. Along the way, he even acted as though he was interested in some other medicinal ingredients. This continued for a while before he randomly picked up the copper plate on the jade platform in a gentle manner. A faint coolness spread the moment the copper plate entered his hand. Of course, this was not because the copper plate was special. Instead, it was due to it had been stuck within cold air for a long period of time. Xiao Yan flipped this copper plate with some interest. His finger gently rubbed it. The rough feeling caused it to appear just like an ordinary copper plate. If not for the somewhat complicated drawings on it, it was likely that no one would truly treat it as a treasure. Xiao Yan was unable to understand the complicated drawings on it. Moreover, due to the presence of some copper rust, the drawings had become a little distorted. It was difficult to clearly see what it was. This is actually an item from the ancient times. Xiao Yan's heart felt some disbelief as he flipped this copper plate. No matter how he tried to probe it, he was unable to discover the slightest uniqueness. If Qian Huazunji had not secretly transmitted words into his ears earlier, it was likely going to be very difficult for him to connect this thing and ancient times. Although Xiao Yan felt some disbelief in his heart, his face appeared extremely calm. He looked as though he merely felt curious about this copper plate. That sloppy old man merely rolled his eyes in the face of Xiao Yan's manner. However, he did not say anything. Xiao Yan was not the only one who was interested in this copper plate. There were quite a number of treasure seekers who had studied it in the past. However, no one ended up exchanging anything for it. Stop dawdling. This copper plate's value is more expensive than the snow-bone ginseng. Moreover, there is no bargaining. The sloppy old man dug in one of his ears and spoke in a causal manner. Xiao Yan's finger paused while it rubbed the copper plate. He smiled and asked, "Is there anything unique about this copper plate? It is even more valuable than the snow-bone ginseng, I don't know." The sloppy old man curled his mouth and gave an answer that stunned Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan bitterly smiled. This old fellow was really strange. He was able to give such an answer in a righteous manner. At this moment, the surrounding observers involuntarily laughed because of the sloppy, old man's reply. Clearly, they had seldom seen a stall owner of such quality. The drawing on it is something I have seen in some ancient books. However, you can forget about asking me of its use. I have no idea. Would I take it out and sell it if I really knew what it is? The sloppy, old man rolled his eyes and answered. In any case, I believe this thing is related to ancient times. It is up to you if you wish to buy it. Everyone present exchanged looks with one another in the face of the sloppy, old man's answer. They helplessly shook their heads. How could they simply rely on this one-sided claim of his? No wonder no one had exchanged for it despite having sat here for such a long time. Xiao Yan felt a headache in the face of this old fellow. It appeared that nothing worked on him. After letting out a bitter laugh, Xiao Yan asked, "What does old Mr. wish to exchange this copper plate for?" "A tier 7 high-grade medicinal formula." The sloppy, old man laughed. It was rare that there was someone interested in this thing. Xiao Yan bitterly laughed once again upon hearing what he wanted. He shook his head, regretfully glanced at the copper plate, and said, "It's too expensive. Even if it is really as Mr. has said and this copper plate is an item from ancient times, there are many things that have been left behind since ancient times. Among them are ordinary day-to-day items. Just this drawing alone is insufficient to assess its value. Forget it. I shall exchange for the snow-bone ginseng." Xiao Yan sighed. He took a jade bottle out of his storage ring and gently placed it on the jade platform. He said, "Old mister, this is an elemental heart pill. A tier 7 middle grade. If you consume it when refining a pill, it will aid in stabilizing your mind. Hence, it will increase the chances of successfully refining a pill. You will not lose out if I use this to exchange for the snowbone ginseng, will you?" The elemental heart pill was considered quite a good assisting medicinal pill. It was really effective for an alchemist. Many alchemists would think of ways to get their hands on a medicinal pill with this kind of effect before beginning their refinements. After all, the things an alchemist were most afraid of during refinement was being interrupted by someone or being unable to focus their mind. With this kind of medicinal pill, they would be able to avoid such disturbances. Moreover, the elemental heart pill was considered the top choice among these assisting medicinal pills. Its actual value was much greater than this snowbone ginseng. Hence, Xiao Yan was not worried that this sloppy, old man would not accept it. As expected, a surprise surged up the face of the sloppy, old man when the words, elemental heart pill, entered his ears. He swiftly grabbed the jade bottle and poured out the pale white medicinal pill in it. After which, he placed it under his nose and sniffed with all his might. "It is indeed the elemental heart pill." The eyes of the sloppy old man immediately brightened after having carefully examined it. This elemental heart pill was a great help to alchemists. Many instances had taken place where he tried his best to prepare some assisting medicinal pills before refining a medicinal pill. However, the best medicinal pill he could refine with such an effect was tier 7 low grade. It was not that he did not have the ability to refine an even higher grade medicinal pill. Instead, it was because he did not have the medicinal formula to do so. The sloppy old man rubbed his hands together and chuckled, "Forget it. I shall take a step back. I don't want a tier 7 high grade formula. As long as you trade the medicinal formula of the elemental heart pill for it, I will give it to you. What do you say?" Xiao Yan was startled when he heard his words. His face was hesitant. The medicinal formula for the elemental heart pill might not be as valuable as that of a tier 7 high-grade medicinal pill, but it was also worth a lot. Using it to exchange for this copper plate had somewhat exceeded the bottom line in Xiao Yang's heart. "Xiao Yang, exchange for it. It is likely that you will not lose out. This thing is indeed something from the ancient times. It is just that this old fellow doesn't know how to open it." Tian Huazunja's low voice once again sounded in Xiao Yang's ears just when he was hesitating. Xiao Yang nodded in his heart when he heard Tian Huazunja's message. Tian Huazunja's experiences were far from what others could compare with. Since Tian Huazunja had put it this way, it was likely that he felt confident. The sloppy old man thought that Xiao Yang was a little unwilling when he saw him remain quiet. He immediately clenched his teeth and took out another jade box from his storage ring. Resting in the jade box was another snowbone ginseng. Moreover, the color of this snowbone ginseng appeared better than the one that Xiao Yang had purchased earlier. Since you need the snowbone ginseng, it is likely that you intend to use it to refine a medicinal pill. If you hand the medicinal formula for the elemental heart pill to me, I will add another snowbone ginseng on top of this copper plate. What do you say?" The sloppy old man spoke with some pain. This snowbone ginseng was something that he had originally kept for himself. 3 old fellows stood close behind this white-clothed young man. Xiao Yang's eyes swept over the bodies of the 3 before they solidified. The 2 old men toward the back had a vast and mighty aura. Their strengths should have reached that of 8-star dozongs. On the other hand, the elder who was standing at the front caused Xiao Yang's heart to be surprised. Dozun, this elder appeared a little lazy. His hands were inserted into his sleeves, appearing similar to that of an ordinary old fellow. However, with Xiao Yang's sharp spiritual perception, he could sense that this person's strength had reached the Dozun class. The sudden intervention of the white-clothed young man had caused numerous surprised gazes to be thrown over from the surroundings. Surprise flashed across their eyes when they saw the 3 old men standing behind him. From the way the young man could bring along such a lineup, it seemed that the background of this group was quite strong. "This friend. I can pay you double the price that you have given over. However, can you give this copper plate to me?" The white-clothed young man smiled at Xiao Yang. The purple-colored metal fan in his hand was tightly pinned against the copper plate. He did not show any signs of releasing it. Xiao Yang's eyes stared at the white-clothed young man. A moment later, he slowly shook his head and faintly said, "No." After uttering those words, he curled both of his fingers and gently flicked at the purple-colored fan in a lightning-like manner. A hidden force suddenly erupted and shook the fan until it shifted aside. After which, Xiao Yang's hand moved like lightning and grabbed the copper plate. Xiao Yang's sudden attack caused the eyes of the white-clothed young man to turn slightly chilly. The young man's counterattack was not the least bit slow. His finger flicked his fan. With a puff sound, the purple-colored fan opened. The surface of the fan cut at Xiao Yang's hand like blades. That sharp aura cut the space itself until slight crack lines formed. Xiao Yang's expression did not change because of the white-clothed young man's vicious retaliation. Xiao Yang flicked his finger on the copper plate and suddenly swept it back. His finger turned into a palm, carrying a vast and mighty strength as it violently smashed into the purple-colored fan. Bang! A low and deep noise resounded over the floor. Under this palm, the purple-colored metal fan appeared to heavily press into the jade platform. Before the white-clothed young man could pull it back, a flying leg filled with strength swung toward the face of the white-clothed man like a hanging antelope's leg. The face of the white-clothed young man slightly sank when he saw the swinging leg of Xiao Yang, which was filled with strength. However, he could only release the metal fan at this moment. He took 2 continuous steps back before dodging Xiao Yang's leg. Be careful. The laser-looking elder, who had not intervened, expression changed in the face of these 2 wisps of ordinary-looking grayish vapor. Both of his hands were clenched and space itself distorted until it solidified. After which, it blocked the 2 wisps of grayish vapor. Although the grayish vapor was blocked, there was still a faint stench that entered the nostrils of the 2 old men. Immediately, the dou qi within their bodies fluctuated in a chaotic fashion. Their faces were shocked as they hurriedly stepped back, suppressing the uprising of the dou qi in their bodies as they did so. Why? Are you intending to snatch it by force? The little fairy doctor faintly asked. She glanced at the white-clothed young man and the old man, who had distorted space, after teaching the remaining 2 old fellows a lesson. The 2 old men were pulled back by the laser-looking elder before they realized the situation in front of them. Some cold sweat appeared on their foreheads. Although the 2 of them were quite strong, they were able to sense the frightening strength of the little fairy doctor and Tian Huazunja. Therefore, the cries they were about to emit was forcefully swallowed by them. 2 dozuns, this time around, they seemed to have kicked a metal plate. The white-clothed young man's eyes sank as he looked over the little fairy doctor and Tian Huazunja. However, he suddenly smiled and said to Xiao Yang, I am Chen Xian from the Profound Xian sect. May I know your name? Profound Xian sect. A thought passed through Xiao Yang's mind when he heard this name. Currently, he had an understanding of the factions within the Central Plains region. This so-called Profound Xian sect possessed a powerful reputation. It was not the least bit inferior to the Ice River Valley. Moreover, it even had traces of surpassing the Ice River Valley, because behind this Profound Xian sect was the renowned Profound Sky sect. One of the 2 renowned sects on the continent. The factions across the Central Plains region were extremely complex. The so-called 1 hall, 1 tower, 2 sects, 3 valleys, 4 pavilions could not completely encompass all the factions on the Central Plains. The Central Plains was incomparably vast. There were quite a number of factions that kept a low profile. The strength these factions possessed was not much weaker than the ranked factions other than the Hall of Souls and Pill Tower. Some of these hidden factions, like the Jiyu clan, could not be underestimated by the Hall of Souls or the Pill Tower. There were 3 lower sects controlled by the Profound Sky sect. The continent called them the 3 lower sects. This Profound Xian sect was one of them. The sloppy, old man played with the copper plate in his hand. He looked at Xiao Yang and Chen Xian with some interest. A moment later, he finally smiled and tossed the copper plate to Xiao Yang in front of Chen Xian's eyes. He said, everything must be done in an orderly manner. The old me is not someone who would do anything for money. Since I have already accepted his thing, I will naturally not turn around and sell it to other people. A smile surfaced on Xiao Yang's face after he received the copper plate. He cupped his hands to the sloppy, old man and smiled as he said, thank you old mister. The sloppy old man waved his hand and said, this is the territory of the Pill Tower. I really don't believe that anyone would dare behave atrociously here. Forget about the Profound Xian sect. Even if a member of the Profound Sky sect were to come here today, they would still have to keep themselves in check. An ugly expression flashed across Chen Xian's sinister face when he heard the words of the sloppy, old man. His eyes were ice cold as he stared at the old man. After which, he turned to Xiao Yang and slowly said, an additional friend is equivalent to an additional path. Offending someone for something that you are unsure of is not reasonable, Xiao Yang smiled. He put the copper plate in his storage ring in front of Chen Xian. After which, he raised his head and looked at Chen Xian. He said, I'm sorry. I think that I am not blessed to be a friend of yours. I also need this thing. However, if you have the patience to wait, I might give it to you for free once I study it. Xiao Yang once again cupped his hands to the sloppy, old man after speaking. Finally, he raised his foot and walked toward the stairs. The little fairy doctor's greyish-purple eyes were dangerous, as she stared at the two people blocking their path. Killing intent churned within her clear, cold voice. The many people on the top floor were attracted by the auras that had suddenly erupted. However, they were not surprised by the auras of the two Dozuns. All of those who could come to this floor had seen many great things. It was frequent for them to meet with elite Dozuns. Naturally, there was nothing for them to feel surprised about. After those words sounded, Xiao Yang ignored Chen Xian's face as it turned chilly. He turned around and walked to the stairs. The little fairy doctor, Qian Huozunja, and Yizhong by the side hurriedly followed. Chen Xian's eyes were dark and dense as he glared at the backs of Xiao Yang's group. Only when this group disappeared from his sight did the corner of his mouth part into a dark, icy-cold smile. Old Xian, help me investigate this group of people. Cuckoo, it is the first time that this young master has met anyone who would threaten me. How interesting, Xiao Yang faintly smiled and replied, this is something that we have no choice over. You need not be overly concerned. I will receive any tactics he forms. The current Xiao Yang possessed the qualification to utter these words. With his current strength, he would not be afraid of anyone below the level of a Dozun if he completely erupted. Moreover, if he really went crazy and threw an extermination fire lotus, even an elite Dozun would have to temporarily seek shelter. Moreover, there were two genuine elite Dozuns currently beside him. This lineup and strength was sufficient to fight some top-tier faction. Although the profound Xian sex background was tough, it was impossible for Xiao Yang to hand the copper plate to Chen Xian given his character. Since both parties would not back down, a conflict was bound to occur. Yizhong found that he was unable to say anything more after hearing Xiao Yang's words. After experiencing the matters from last time, he had been thinking that Xiao Yang possessed a powerful background behind him. Otherwise, how was it possible for him to force back a super-strong expert like being he? Xiao Yang was naturally unaware of what Yizhong was thinking. After descending the stairs, he took one lap around the second floor. Finally, he found the stall Xinlan occupied. Xinlan, who was bored waiting for a buyer to find her, was joyful when she saw Xiao Yang's group. She hurriedly stood up. How is it? Xiao Yang smiled and asked, he, that old fellow has finally given in. Xinlan laughed. After which, her pretty eyes turned to the red-robed elder, who was looking at them from a short distance away. Are there any other gains? Xiao Yang smiled. This old fellow failed to endure, none. The 1,000-year-old green spiritual vine that you mentioned is an extremely rare medicinal ingredient. I have asked quite a number of people from this place, but none of them have it. Xinlan shook her head as she helplessly answered. The red-robed old man also grinned and nodded upon hearing Xiao Yang's words. The elemental heart pill was of great help to an alchemist. Moreover, it was quite troublesome to refine it. Even some alchemists, who had reached the middle grade of the 7th tier, had a low chance of success when refining this medicinal pill. This was why the elemental heart pill was so expensive. The old man had indeed gained more by using this medicinal ingredient to exchange for elemental heart pill. Xiao Yang did not continue to stay after informing the red-robed old man. He led his group to the stairs and descended them before leaving the alchemist trade fair. After which, they hurried back to the Yi Manor. Xiao Yang anxiously got Yizhong and the rest to shut the manor's door after having returned to the Yi Manor. He led Qian Huozunja and the little fairy doctor into a room after that. The three of them surrounded a table within a room. That strange copper plate they had obtained earlier sat on the table. The copper plate was pale yellow in color. Many curly earthworm-like, green rust covered the surface. This copper rust had eroded and covered some of the drawings on the copper plate. Old Mr. Yao, are you certain this thing is worth as much as the elemental heart pill's medicinal formula? Xiao Yang stared at this copper plate that could not appear any more ordinary. He had already used various methods on it. Even the drawings on the copper plate had been carefully copied by him. However, he was still unable to obtain even the least bit of information from the copper plate. Qian Huozunja smiled as he watched Xiao Yang, who had ended up empty-handed despite using various tactics. He let out 2 bursts of laughter and purposefully said in an unfathomable manner, Lad, if it is so easy to undo the secret on it, do you think that you would have the chance to enjoy its benefits? Xiao Yang involuntarily smiled when he heard Qian Huozunja's words. He said, in that case, can old Mr. Yao please tell me just how great this thing is? Qian Huozunja smiled in a pleased manner upon hearing Xiao Yang's tone. He extended his hand and took the copper plate. After which, he placed it in his hand, tilted it to the fire lamp, and waved it at Xiao Yang. Have you discovered anything? Xiao Yang carefully studied this copper plate. He could clearly see the twisting earthworm-like rust under the reflection of the light. He helplessly shook his head and said, "Old Mr. Yao, please don't keep us guessing." How impatient. Qian Huozunja shook his head. He curled his finger, and a thread of dough qi agglomerated at the tip. It transformed into a tiny dough qi needle. After which, Qian Huozunja controlled this extremely dense dough qi needle and carefully inserted it into the green-colored copper rust on the surface of the copper plate. Under Qian Huozunja's careful removal, the green-colored copper dust began to slowly fall and land on the surface of the table. The true secret does not lie with the copper plate. Instead, it lies with this inconspicuous copper rust. How can you only use common sense to deduce an item from ancient times? Qian Huozunja flicked his finger and tossed the green-colored copper rust to Xiao Yan. He said, "Use the heavenly flame to burn it. I also wish to see what exactly is inside." Xiao Yan carefully received the green copper ball. He glanced over it before summoning a cluster of jade-green flames with a somewhat doubtful attitude. After which, he swept the green-colored copper ball into the flame. After this burning, Xiao Yan finally discovered some of the unique aspects of this copper rust. He found that this copper ball did not show any traces of melting regardless of how high the temperature of the jade-green flame was. There is indeed something here, Xiao Yan quietly and joyfully cried out in his heart. He hurriedly raised the temperature. This continued for over 10 minutes, before the green-colored copper ball finally began to show signs of melting. With the increase of the melting of the copper ball, Xiao Yang suddenly discovered a gradual change in the green color on the copper ball. Tiny pieces of yellow dust quietly fell from the melting copper a little at a time. Finally, they remained suspended within the flame. They flickered just like spirits, hinting like they were filled with a dense spirituality. The faint yellow dust specks gradually fell. After around 2 minutes, they ceased falling. That copper ball disappeared the instant after all the dust fell. Following the annihilation of the copper ball, 5 pieces of pale yellow dust remained suspended within the flame. They flickered and seemed to be filled with a spiritual luster. There were no other changes no matter how the flame burned. This is. Xiao Yang's eyes were startled when he saw the 5 pale yellow specks of dust within the flame. He felt a little lost. They were clearly not things he recognized. Spirit nourishment powder. Xiao Yang raised his eyebrows as he watched Qian Huozunja's expression suddenly become joyful. His mouth softly muttered some words. What is the use of this spirit nourishment powder? Xiao Yang's eyes were shining as he looked at the 5 tiny pale yellow specks of dust within the room. He licked his mouth and inquired. Qian Huozunja fondled his beard. He mused for a moment before slowly replying, this spirit nourishment power was quite renowned even during the ancient times. It is not only an item one must have in order to refine medicinal pills tier 8 and above, but it is also able to nourish one's soul if the dust merges with the soul, gradually strengthening the spirituality of one's soul. From there, one could step into that so-called soul state. Joy surged into Xiao Yang's eyes the moment he heard Qian Huozunja's words. It seemed that these inconspicuous little things hid great ability. During ancient times, some of the alchemists who had touched the soul state would try their best to obtain this spirit nourishment powder. This thing is just like a magnet that attracts spirituality. If it merges with one's soul, it would enable the soul to fill with spirituality without one realizing it. Moreover, it also possesses a good catalytic effect when it comes to some unique conditions where one would gain an understanding. Qian Huozunja smiled and replied. Xiao Yang slightly nodded. The joy in his eyes was difficult to hide. He really did not take a loss from this transaction. The value of this so-called spirit nourishment powder was indeed far from what the medicinal formula for the elemental heart pill could compare with. Moreover, the thing that surprised him was that this powder could strengthen the spirituality of one's soul. The soul state required the soul to be able to bestow a medicinal pill with spirituality. However, the precondition of this effect was that one's soul must be filled with sufficient spirituality. Nevertheless, if one did not have a special method to train one's soul, one would not be able to sense this so-called spirituality. Moreover, this kind of soul training method had completely disappeared after a countless number of years of history. Hence, one could only borrow the help of external items or lucky encounters in order to enter a mysterious condition and raise the spirituality of one's soul. Similar to the 2 previous experiences that Xiao Yang, after this unusual flow entered his body, Xiao Yang immediately felt a wild joy. He sensed the spiritual aura contained in his soul begin to grow at an extremely slow pace. It is actually spiritual aura. Xiao Yang had thought of all methods to increase the spiritual aura within his soul, but he had failed to increase his soul by even a little. However, with this spirit nourishment powder, spiritual aura, which could not be improved by relying on an ordinary method, could be extracted by him and merged with his soul. Xiao Yang felt a wild joy as he sensed the strengthening spiritual aura within his soul. It was a long while later before he gradually focused his mind. After he calmed down, a pale yellow dust of light vaguely appeared in his mind. An unusual suction force was being emitted from it. This kind of suction force was weak, but it appeared to possess a kind of strange strength that extracted spiritual energy, which many experts could do nothing about, from the surroundings. The seemingly chaotic spiritual aura slowly seeped out of the space around. It continuously entered through the space between Xiao Yang's brows. This spiritual aura absorption continued for nearly 3 hours, before the glow and suction force emitted by the pale yellow dust gradually weakened. Clearly, this kind of spirit nourishment powder was unable to last for long. The glow emitted by this light particle dimmed. A long while later, a slight crack suddenly sounded within Xiao Yang's head. The intense pain gradually subsided. While Xiao Yang was still feeling panicked, an extremely vague, elderly mumble was emitted from where the light erupted. The limit of soul, shut the heavenly spirit, absorb the spirit forge. The soul, the indistinct elderly voice softly resounded in Xiao Yang's mind. It appeared just like sacred words, causing one to gain a trance-like feeling. The trance-like feeling did not cause Xiao Yang to become absent-minded. Although the elderly voice in his mind was unclear, he still tried to remember as much as possible. This elderly voice resounded 3 times, before it completely scattered. Xiao Yang slowly opened his tightly shut eyes. There was an expression of contemplation on his face. It is rumored that some experts are able to leave behind a spiritual imprint on certain items. If I have guessed correctly, that elderly voice from earlier should have been left behind by an expert from the ancient times. However, due to the great amount of time that has passed, the voice has become indistinct. Xiao Yang softly muttered to himself, the limit of soul, shut the heavenly spirit, absorb the spirit forge. The souls. Xiao Yang frowned and softly muttered. A moment later, he thought, it seems to be a kind of word formula. However, it is clearly incomplete. I wonder what it is used for. Xiao Yang mused for a moment to no avail. He could not help but helplessly shake his head. After which, he stored the 4 remaining pieces of spirit nourishment powder into his strong ring. The effect of this thing, being able to absorb the spiritual aura, was too important to Xiao Yang. Unfortunately, it could only last a very short period of time. He could not afford to squander them. Hence, he could not easily use it. After all, he might need these things to increase his chance of success when he refined medicinal pills in the future. Xiao Yang softly sighed as he sat cross-legged on the bed. After which, he slowly shut his eyes. His mouth also moved slightly while he did so. If one were to carefully listen, one would discover that Xiao Yang was whispering the word formula he had obtained from the spirit nourishment powder earlier. The low and indistinct sound slowly resounded around the room. This continued for half an hour before the calm interior of the room finally began to form an unusual ripple. Swoosh! Xiao Yang's tightly shut eyes suddenly opened when that ripple was formed. His face was filled with shock. An instant earlier, he had sensed the presence of spiritual aura within his surroundings. This kind of thing had only happened twice to him, when he had entered the strange conditions before. However, Xiao Yang was certain that he had not entered that kind condition earlier. Xiao Yang tightly knit his brows. A moment later, he suddenly clenched his hand. A glaring glint erupted within his dark black eyes. Is this because of that word formula? Spiritual aura was a kind of extremely mysterious energy. It did not possess the might of Do Qi, but it was a great nourishment to one's soul. However, spiritual aura seemed to be mixed in everything and was extremely difficult to sense. During ancient times, alchemists were able to sense spiritual aura's existence and absorb it due to them possessing some special soul skills. However, in this era, the mysterious soul skills had completely disappeared. There were few alchemists who knew how to sense spiritual aura and absorb it. Xiao Yang had tried an unknown number of methods in order to sense spiritual aura. However, his efforts were futile with the exception of his entries into those mysterious states, which had caused him to feel quite helpless. Spiritual aura was really a great luxury to the alchemists of this era. The joy on Xiao Yang's face was gradually withdrawn. He suppressed the fluctuations within his heart and once again slowly sank into his mind. He continuously chanted the word formula he had obtained from the spirit nourishment powder. Xiao Yang shut his eyes and continued chanting for half an hour. The quiet space within the room finally began to show signs of a slight fluctuation once again. The fluctuation did not cause Xiao Yang to feel overly shocked this time around. From his senses, he was able to tell that threads of extremely tiny, chaotic flows had suddenly appeared in this empty space that was filled with natural energy. These flows were hidden very deep, and were covered by dense natural energy. If not for the word formula, Xiao Yang would not have been able to detect the flows. Are these spiritual auras? Xiao Yang's mind focused on these faint flows. A moment later, he began to understand something. These kinds of spiritual auras were extremely faint, and they were very weak. Even if they were occasionally absorbed into one's body, they would be crushed by the surrounding natural energy during circulation. No wonder there were very few people who could sense the existence of spiritual auras. Xiao Yang felt joy within his heart as he sensed the existence of spiritual auras for the first time under his normal training condition. If he managed to successfully absorb these spiritual auras, his soul would sooner or later advance to the soul state after being gradually filled by these spiritual auras. At that time, his alchemist level would definitely be able to advance to the 8th tier guru stage. The 7th tier was the grandmaster stage, the 8th tier was the guru stage. The difference between these tiers was one that was extremely difficult to overcome. If Xiao Yang were able to successfully advance to the 8th tier, even those super-strong elite dozuns would treat him politely. With this status, Xiao Yang clearly understood the treatment he would receive even from Zun as Jiyu clan would definitely not be poor. There is still more to this word formula. This part that I have learned is only a small portion of it. Xiao Yang finally recovered after a while. He bitterly smiled, shook his head, and lamented. Xiao Yang sighed. He was dull for a moment before he finally violently clenched his teeth. Everything was always difficult in the beginning. He had already endured through this most difficult beginning. How could he be unable to resolve the subsequent problems? Since he did not have a method to absorb it, he would use the stupidest method. Absorption through swallowing. Xiao Yang once again entered the training condition after having made up his mind. After which, he widened his mouth and violently absorbed the natural energy mixed with spiritual auras into his body. Before Xiao Yang had the time to control this energy that had just entered his body, the wisps of weak spiritual auras mixed in with the energy were like porcelain vases. With a clang, the whips was pressed until nothing was left before disappearing. The first failure did not exceed Xiao Yang's expectations. It would really be strange if he managed to succeed at such a thing the first time around. After refining the natural energy that he had absorbed into his body, into Do Qi, which merged into his body, Xiao Yang once again sucked in another cluster of natural energy. This time around, he isolated the wisps of spiritual auras mixed within the energy with lightning like speed the moment it entered his body. Subsequently, he carefully removed the energy around the spiritual auras a little at a time, much like removing the silk from a cocoon. This was a task that really tested Xiao Yang's ability to control his mind. With Xiao Yang's current control ability, he only managed to remove finger-sized wisp of a faint spiritual aura from the energy after having failed over 20 times. It is indeed difficult, without any orthodox training methods. Xiao Yang involuntarily let out a bitter laugh when this wisp of spiritual aura entered his soul. Just this single wisp of spiritual aura had exhausted 1 hour of his time. The effort he had put in and the reward he had obtained were not even. However, he did not have any other solution at this moment. After all, regardless of how small it was still something. If other Tier 7 high-grade alchemists were aware that he was able to absorb spiritual aura, it was likely that their eyes would turn red from envy. This was the case even if it was only a tiny wisp of spiritual aura. After comforting himself in his heart, Xiao Yang sighed, and he once again focused his mind, entering his training state. Next, he began the incomparably difficult and complicated task of extracting spiritual aura. An entire night swiftly flowed by amid Xiao Yang's tireless training. Xiao Yang, who was seated on a bed, finally opened his eyes when the first rays of morning light landed in his room. His dark black eyes appeared to have gained an exceptional sparkle. After an entire night's effort, Xiao Yang had successfully absorbed 8 wisps of spiritual aura. This was a result that he had only obtained after he had become familiar with the method toward the end of the night, reducing a significant amount of time in the process. The absorption of 8 wisps of spiritual aura caused the spiritual aura within Xiao Yang's soul to fill. Hence, a night of exhaustion not only did not cause Xiao Yang to feel the least bit tired, but had instead gave him a kind of extremely refreshed feeling. It did not lose to the refreshness of training for an entire night. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.